Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Harry Unplugged. This is episode 15. If you don't know who we are, we're two Gen Z liberals who scream about politics every week, Mondays at 1 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wild week. Hope everyone had a great weekend. And today, I think we're going to obviously talk about what continues to dominate the news, which is the Israel and Gaza conflict, and a little bit about Biden's response to it, and a little bit of a conversation about domestically how Americans are viewing this conflict. I know on social media it's raging pretty heavily right now, whether you're quote unquote pro-Palestinian or pro-Israel, etc. And give you a little bit of our takes on that. Very quickly before we get started, though, in the link in the description, both in the show and on the YouTube, we've made an executive decision. We have merchandise. I'm holding it up right now. This is a unplugged hoodie. It's actually like, if you're not on YouTube, then like I'm so sorry you're not gonna understand this, but you can check it out. It's got lettering. It's pretty sick. Um, a lot of people are asking. I feel like we're just gonna like soft launch it and see how it goes. So like the website you see in the description is not anything too crazy. Like not too many options or anything. It's just basic design. You can gray, black with like blue cursive letters. There may be one with like a little like cutout picture of us of sorts. And I'll just see if like people are interested. I know a lot of people have been asking to support the pod in some way, and we're still talking about the Patreon soon. So um, obviously the hoodies, if you are a hoodie or a mug, whatever is on that website, if you enjoy it, it would actually mean the world to us. If you decided to make that purchase, and it helps us out a lot. So just thought I'd throw it out there. We love you guys so much. We appreciate everyone tuning in every single week. It truly means the world. And with that being said, let's do this thing, Harry. Let's kick us off, buddy.
Man, what? So yeah, as Chris said, this has been like, wow. The dominating story in the news the past couple of weeks is what's happening in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine, and it's so difficult. It's just such a difficult conflict because there's so much passion, so much emotion between each sides. No matter what side you're on, people have very strong beliefs on the matter. But regardless, if you're just kind of like a casual who may not really pay attention to the depths of these issues, you're not like studying it in depth and whatnot, which I think the majority of people aren't. You're probably just scrolling the news and seeing these horrific photos. The photos are very difficult to look at of innocent people, innocent children, dead, murdered from both, Israel bombs or Hamas invasion and just shooting innocent people. So it's just been a rough week, I think, for a lot of people, especially those who are in Palestine and those who are in Israel. So we want to start off the pod by just kind of acknowledging those people, giving our thoughts to the innocent people and the victims of this terrible tragedy. And if you have any family or friends or any relatives involved who have either lost their lives or just happen to be caught up in the middle of this, we are so sorry. It's just a very, 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 very sad situation. So we want to acknowledge like the humanity behind what we're going to talk about today first, because that's often overlooked. People will look at the numbers and they'll just be, they'll look at the numbers and think they're numbers, when in reality there's a person, there's a story behind every single one of those. And it's very tragic. So I just kind of I think that's a good way to open the conversation here about when we're talking about this, hard stuff.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And thank you for saying that, because I think as a lot of people scroll social media, and especially our generation, may have a little bit of a more pro-Palestinian stance, etc. There's, a lot of people are in very heated debates and arguments and feel very passionate. A lot of people are affected by this, but you got to, also remember as you're scrolling that, like Harry said, this is these are people's lives, and a lot of times that gets overlooked for the sake of politics. But just take everything we say in this podcast knowing that exactly what Harry said. Every one of these people has a story, and regardless of what you think of it all, it's very tragic. So
yeah. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about what's actually gone on in recent weeks. I think we're seeing Actually, let's just start with the. How about we just start with the numbers, guys? We were just kind of talking about the numbers we just mentioned, and I think you have some numbers. I have some numbers in front of me. According to NBC News, more than 2,450 people have been killed in Gaza, and 9,200 people have been injured. In Israel, 1,400 people have been killed, and 3,500 have been wounded. The death toll for Americans, because Americans have also lost their lives, from the Hamas's attack on Israel and the subsequent war, stands at 30. And it's likely, or it's at least believed, that there are more, around 13 last time I checked. The numbers might be updated, but at least 13 being held hostage by Hamas, wherever they're being held hostage. The FBI negotiators are still actively trying to get these people back. President Biden met with the families of people who are still have hostages alive or believed to be alive. He talked to them while he was in the Oval Office the other day, and he assured them that we're doing everything we can to get them back, because we are. But that's a lot of people affected. That's over 10,000 people injured. That's over close to 4,000 people who have died, including numbers on both sides. It's just very difficult, and I think you also have some numbers that give some context as well.
Yeah,
right?
I think that one of the things that's being talked about a little bit is, Gaza. I believe half of their total population, which is about 2 million people, is under 18, and so a significant loss of life. Specifically on the Gaza side has been children, women and children, specifically children. As of right now, when we're recording this, it's between 600 and 750 children in Gaza have been killed, which is just, not there's. I don't know that I really need to say anything on that. It's hard. It's hard to fathom.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like what's really hitting me hard, and I think like a lot of other people, it's kind of like the child aspect of this. There's just so many kids dying, and we're getting different reports on both sides. Like there was that story that 40 babies estimated, that was never like a confirmed number, but around like 40 babies were beheaded by Hamas terrorists, but we've also seen footage out of Gaza of innocent kids dead, innocent kids murdered, and yeah. Sorry, it's just difficult, man. Sorry.
No, yeah. I think a little bit of, and we'll get into Harry and I's, opinions on this, which may not be liked by a lot of people. But actually, the Israeli report on that dominated the news a lot. The 40 babies was actually was not true, was unconfirmed and then retracted. I think that during a tense time like this, it's a lot of bad information gets out. I think Israel probably has I don't know why that information, where that information came from, but it was since retracted. Regardless of that, though, to your point, there has been confirmed reports of. I saw a picture that you'll literally never be able to unsee. Shout out to I think MSNBC made a good decision, but the Israeli government released a picture of I believe a 16-month-old who was in a cradle that had I don't even know how to say this. It essentially the baby had passed, and there was bullet holes riddled everywhere, and MSNBC made a stark, intense decision to air it just so people were aware. So I mean, yeah, from all sides, people are losing their lives. It's terrible.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, just a note on that baby's beheading story. It's like, I don't actually know where we're at with that. I don't think they ever issued like a formal retraction of like, oh, it didn't happen. I thought I see that? I mean, maybe I just missed it. Did you see it?
I thought I'd seen an official report from in I believe NBC that the Israeli government retracted the story. And
I actually haven't seen. Maybe
I can see if we can.
I don't know. Maybe try to find that. I don't know. Yeah. Because last time I checked, I mean, I just haven't seen anything like that. Like genuinely, because it was weird to me because the Jerusalem Post, which is like obviously a report, news agency that's based in Jerusalem, confirmed it. They said that they saw photos. So
Really?
I don't know. I don't know where we're at with this. But that's the thing. Like I think like see look I think that this like back and forth that Chris and I are having right now is really representative of this modern age, the modern age of social media dealing with war, because it's like the information on that's being spread on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it, a lot of it's just completely false. A lot of it's just completely false, and like nobody really knows where we're at with these stories anymore. Like it's just hard. It's just hard because it's like it's hard to know what's real and what's fake. And like I would definitely recommend, if you're listening to this podcast, like verify what we're saying and like go to verified news agencies. I think Reuters has done a really great job of covering CBS, NBC. I also recommend like news agencies that actually have reporters on the ground. Obviously, ones that are more reliable, but I think that's another aspect, another layer of this conversation is that it's just we don't really know what's true and what's false, given how like Elon Musk has taken the guardrails off of Twitter, and like community notes are great, but they're not very fast. Um,
And they're
so
often
I don't know, man,
wrong a lot of times. But yes.
and they're often wrong, right? Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Um,
Um,
but yeah, I think that's well said. There's a lot of information flying around. The um, so essentially there was a broadcast in Israel where someone had claimed that the reporter had claimed that they had heard from an Israeli soldier that 40 babies at least, um, uh, that they were beheaded or something along those lines. CNN reported on October 12th that an unnamed Israeli official told a news outlet that the government had not confirmed the claims, including Netanyahu's spokesperson. Quote, there have been cases of Hamas militants um, uh, carrying out beheadings and other ISIS-style atrocities. However, we cannot confirm if victims were men or women, soldiers, civilians, adults, or children. So they they just claim they didn't know. They couldn't confirm it. Now, look, I'll say this, and I
hmm.
want to preface this by saying as we get into this, I posted a video about this. I think that this issue is incredibly complicated. It's the most complicated geopolitical event in human history. And so I'm myself, I'm under staunch belief that if you don't have a direct tie to the region or you are not some set historian, you should probably not be making claims online of I'm being very staunchly pro this or pro this. A lot of people are during an inflamed time like this. There's a lot of information flying around, so I think the best thing you can do is listen. In my personal opinion, and Harry and I actually may disagree on this, and we'll probably disagree a little bit later. But I think that I'm uh, pretty undecided or split. I think that there's a lot of atrocities going on between, at least in the last 7 days, between both Israel and Gaza. Just talking about in the context of the last 7 to 14 days. My understanding about the report about 40 babies, if I really had to take my best educated guess, I know for a fact that there has been, like I said, pictures of babies who are not alive. One was burned, completely burned. It's absolutely horrific. The 40 babies and some of the other initial reports that seem to have come from unnamed Israeli government officials were probably in an attempt to unite some of the Western world in their what is now going to soon be a full-on ground invasion. And so I would probably guess that was a little bit of wartime purposeful misinformation. I could be wrong, and I'm not trying to suggest that Hamas has not committed atrocities, because they have. But I think that Israel is really looking for support because they are, and again, I want to staunchly say that I probably am pretty, 50-50 on this issue, but Israel is doing some atrocious things right now, especially in the last 24 hours as Gazans flee to the south. They are telling Gazans to flee to the south and then bombing the shit out of the south. I understand that Hamas purposely puts a lot of their military targets behind apartment buildings, behind hospitals, etc. And so people say, what is Israel supposed to do? You're going to end up bombing civilians. I still just don't know if I can. It's so hard to be able. I don't know. To be honest, I just feel like we're losing a lot of the humanitarian. It's hard. It's really really hard for me to look at someone and think about an apartment building with Gazans in it, most of which are probably children, and say, well, it's Hamas's fault that all these people are going to die, and then bomb the shit out of them. Um, and obviously the context of the last 15 years. Uh, I think a lot of people on social media are pointing out Gaza is an open air prison. If you live in Gaza, you can't get out. There's little humanitarian aid. Most people are in poverty. Whose fault that is, I'm not here to take a stance on. Um, but yeah, sorry for the rant. You can go ahead.
No, I actually think you bring up a good point as to Israel's response. Like, um, I think a response has to be measured, it has to be calculated, and you have to really do your best effort to not kill civilians. And I'm not sure we're seeing that effort. Anyway, aside from that, what you said just kind of led me to remember this report I just read, and I actually pulled it up while you were talking. Um, it's from CBS News. Maybe I'll just actually like throw it up on the screen. If for people watching on
Yeah.
YouTube, maybe you'll see this, maybe you won't. It sometimes doesn't work. We're just gonna throw it up anyway. It's the CBS News report. It's kind of just like an update, like a live update. It's Israel Hamas war, death toll climbs in Gaza, airstrikes as the Secretary of State Blinken visits the region, and I think these two paragraphs are really important. It says while the death toll in Israel from Hamas's bloody rampage crept up, with victims still being identified, images from inside the densely packed, completely blockaded Palestinian territory showed many neighborhoods flattened, and that's true. I mean, you kind of look at these pictures coming out of Gaza, and it really is just like entire buildings, multiple in one region, just destroyed. It's just rubble. And then the next paragraph it says the scale of Israel's counterattack led a group of independent experts at the United Nations to warn, while condemning the horrific war crimes committed by Hamas, that indiscriminate military attacks against the already exhausted Palestinian people of Gaza amounted to collective punishment. They went on to say that this is absolutely prohibited under international law and amounts to a war crime, which is a big allegation. Experts at the United Nations saying that it's a war crime. I think that's something that people should pay attention to. When talking about
Yeah.
this, because we're just I don't know. I don't mean to rant too much. Sorry.
No, no,
We're
no,
just like
no. You're
we're seeing these apartment buildings destroyed, and I read something as well that Gaza is being bombed more. And again, don't take my word for everything. I would definitely recommend independently fact checking us. But I read something around that like Gaza has been bombed more in the past few days than ISIS was being bombed on average every single month by the United States between 2014 and 2019. That's a lot of bombs. So, like, they've bombed them more in a couple days than the United States was bombing ISIS per month between 2014 and 2019. It's a lot of bombs. And again, like, I think, I know, just for clarification reasons, our position is clear here. Hamas is bad. Hamas deserves to be eliminated. They are a terrorist group, and what they did to the Israeli people is horrific and disgusting. And I agree with what President Biden said in that 60 minutes interview. Hamas should be eliminated, but the Palestinian people should not. And I think what you said, Chris, like, we know that Hamas are cowards. They love to hide behind civilians. They love to hide behind children. But I don't think that means you bomb, these places where civilians are known to be. It's just such a difficult situation. And
right.
man,
Right. Exactly.
so hard.
I think no, yeah, I think that's well said, and I appreciate you bringing up that article because yeah, a lot of people will point to that as the UN will has screamed specifically 24 hours is not enough time for 1.1 million people to get out of the north of Gaza, and Israel could be or is I'm not sure exactly what your article said committing war crimes. I think a couple other important things here is that I completely lost my train of thought. Uh,
You're good.
just sorry, just it's a hard topic to talk about. I think thank you.
No,
Our
it's a
position,
lot, dude. Like, it's a lot to keep in your mind.
and I do want to reiterate, and this is pretty much my stance. It's been my stance on TikTok and Threads which is Twitter essentially, which is it's possible to be pro-Israel. It's possible to believe that Israel has a right to exist because it does, while simultaneously being critical of the fact that Israel's government, as it stands right now, is very right-wing, borderline fascist. A lot of people in Israel don't like Netanyahu. I don't like Netanyahu. Some of the people that in the Israeli government say some very, very, very extreme right things, specifically regarding this situation. There was an appointee of Netanyahu the other day who on a TV interview essentially said, it's absolutely not true that the citizens of Gaza aren't partaking in this. Essentially, he was conflating civilians with Hamas and saying, I guess they're all the same. I think there's some very right-wing people in the Israeli government. I think it's possible to be pro-Israel while simultaneously, agreeing that they have done some horrible things, specifically over the last decade. And simultaneously, it's possible to be pro-Palestinian or feel for the Palestinian people while being able to, agree that Hamas is a terrorist organization that committed an absolutely atrocious act. And then obviously you get into the fact that, Gaza as a whole, probably there's Gaza as a whole is hell. It's an open air prison. You cannot leave. Israel controls all the borders. And so you very much feel for the Palestinian people. I don't think Harry and I are here to make a judgment about why all of that is the way it is in the last 2,000 years. I would very much advocate for everybody listening. If you, again, are not a historian or you are not, don't have a vested interest in the region, which if you do, I really pray that everyone, no matter if you're Palestinian or you have people in Gaza or Israel, I really pray that everyone stays safe, or I hope everyone stays safe. I really would advocate for everybody to just watch, listen, and just try to learn as much as you can. We're trying to give you information about the last 10 days and kind of our stance on it. And, we will learn more as we learn more. But sorry, just also had to get that out of the way. If you want to say something, go ahead. God, this episode is fucking deep, bro. Fuck.
It's hard, man. Like, this is a really difficult topic to talk about, especially because, we're not experts, nor are we people directly affected, but it's like, no, everybody in the world is watching. The entire world is watching what's happening in the Middle East, so it's hard not to want to talk about it. But as Chris said, we're doing a lot of watching, listening, and reading right now. We recommend everybody else does as well. I think you perfectly put that. Yeah, man, it's just so hard. Anyway, look, wow, it's just anyway, it's very difficult. This is a very difficult topic to dive into and stuff. So.
Yeah. I think that we'll shift a little bit to domestically. I think that a lot of people probably are curious about President Biden's response. Obviously, the United States, one of our biggest allies, if not our biggest ally, is Israel. We send them some $3 billion a year. We essentially fund their entire Iron Dome, which is protects them from missile strikes, etc. Israel is a massive ally of the United States, and so the direct response from President Biden was to obviously unequivocally back Israel, which I think any politician would do. I think that's probably the right idea. I think President Biden has also been regardless of if I may, and I'm still determining this, regardless of if I may disagree or agree with some of the nuance, I think that I'm glad it's Biden. I think that he's been, he rallied. He has been a very effective leader. He's spoken well. He's made it very clear that, the Palestinian people are not Hamas. He has debated. He has conversated with Egypt, which I believe is happening as we speak, that they will try to open the border for Gazans possibly to cross through Egypt, or possibly Americans there's some unclear there, but he's been trying to get Gazan civilians out. He's made it very clear that Palestinian people matter, while simultaneously backing up Israel, and also saying today that, contrary to popular social media belief, Biden doesn't have a say on whether Netanyahu's government is going to storm into Gaza. He's made it apparently clear that it would be it would be hell, but that's not President Biden's call to make. He doesn't control these things. I think his leadership and his response has been effective, and I think it's been good.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so happy you bring that up because, and here I can already see the comments coming of Harry, loves Biden, never criticizes him. I already can see it. However, I genuinely believe that President Biden's response to all of this has been fantastic. And I think he's playing this very, very well politically, but also doing the right thing simultaneously, which is not always the case in politics. There are a lot of politicians who will choose to do what's beneficial politically and not do the right thing. Biden often doesn't do that. He often does the right thing, but just happens to be an instance when it sort of overlaps. Now, what I'm talking about is that, as Chris mentioned, President Biden has made it clear that the United States unequivocally stands with our ally Israel, which is good for the United States government because we are allies of Israel. And, we can't just be like, give them the middle finger because they were attacked by Hamas, and Hamas is a terrorist organization, and we unequivocally condemn them. Good stuff by President Biden. I like it. But Biden's not just only standing with Israel. He's not just saying, we like Israel and throwing his hands up and walking away. No, he's also doing pretty much everything he can to make sure that innocent lives are spared. And I have a couple examples of that. As Chris mentioned earlier, Biden is negotiating with Egypt and Israel to allow innocent Palestinians to leave, go through the border there. Egypt's not being very helpful there, but we're still working at it. But I saw a couple stories today which, I really think highlight President Biden's efforts. So, number one being President Biden's focus on getting Americans out. Now, of course, the United States has unique interest in getting American citizens out of Hamas. And so we just got reporting the other day that the United States will facilitate charter flights to transport Americans out of Israel. They're also doing the same for Gaza. They've sent a bunch of ships into, I don't know, I actually forget what the sea is there that borders Israel and Gaza. If you can maybe look up a map and remind me or something like that. But there are currently ships right now as we're recording this docked there waiting to take Americans, and hopefully they'll be back for innocent people as well, innocent Palestinians. So Biden's not only doing that, but he also just talked to Israel today, and due to United States pressure, Israel has resumed the water supply to southern Gaza. So earlier in the week, Israel and some spokespeople for them came out and said that no water will be going to Gaza. They're cutting it off. They basically cut off electricity, water, all these things. And they're saying that no more, we're not doing it until Hamas surrenders. But obviously that creates a lot of issues because, the water doesn't just benefit Hamas, it benefits innocent people. You can't live without water. And so President Biden got on the phone, United States, and kind of put on that pressure saying, look, we know you're in this war. We know you're, going to launch this ground invasion, but you got to let people have water. You cannot, not give access to people to have basic necessity in the form of water. You can't live without it. And thankfully Israel did open the water supply to southern Gaza. And so look, I just think these are a couple examples of President Biden, especially the water, and trying to negotiate a peaceful exit for Palestinians. I think there's a couple examples of President Biden, publicly saying, yes, we stand with Israel, and also legislatively standing with Israel, but also making sure that innocent people are not dying and that, humanitarian aid is getting to them. They're also sending humanitarian aid to Palestine now, specifically for innocent people, not for Hamas, for innocent people. And it's like, President Biden doesn't have to do any of this. He's the American president. This conflict does not directly involve the United States. He does not have to be making these efforts and trying to save innocent people. He's doing it anyway, which I think is commendable. I think that's really impressive. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican, this issue is not very political. It's just like, I think we should all be in favor of President Biden doing the right thing here, not only for the United States interests, but also the interests of innocent Israeli people and the innocent Palestinian people. Sorry for that long rant, but it's good stuff.
That was perfectly said. Like, I think that there's again incredible nuance with our long-standing, very strong ally in Israel, the politics of it, the nature, which I'm about to bring up, of how a lot of this is changing. I think he's done probably the best he can, and I think it's been quite impressive. And again, I think that there's a notion hate. I almost said like hate on anyone. Not to like. I think there's a notion specifically in regards to this issue and a lot of issues from the much further left. I think I would define myself, as I've said many times, as a staunch liberal with a lot of hints of being a progressive, maybe in the middle of progressive and liberal. But from the progressive or far left, I think that there's just often, especially in a situation like this, an assumption that as Harry and I say privately, that President Biden can fly. This is not an issue that, people say, well, if Biden could do more for X, Y, and Z, I just, he does, I know that there's this common, it feels like I don't know how to explain it. It feels like it's in the air. People on social media talk as if the U.S. has control over all this. And obviously, we have significant sway, which is why President Biden got on the phone and said, turn the water back on to southern Gaza. But in terms of a ground invasion or, Israel's continual, bombing and et cetera, that's not up to Biden. So I think that his response in terms of all the nuance has been great. Even if I may disagree with our strong I may begin to disagree in the coming years of our strong allyship with Israel. I think right now the response is very good. And that brings me essentially to this, which I think I found this today and I thought it was really, really interesting. And I wanted to share it. I'll read it off if you're not on audio, or if you're not on YouTube, but I'll pull it up. So here's some polling from CNN. I believe this was today. I was looking. Half of Americans, 50%, say that the Israeli government's military response to the Hamas attacks is fully justified. 20% say it's partially justified. 8% say it's not justified at all. 21% unsure. Obviously, Republicans are far more likely than independents or Democrats to say the response is fully justified. 68% of Republicans say so, compared to 45% of independents and 38% of Democrats. Now, this is what's really interesting. And I think a lot of people know this. It's just not being talked about enough. 81% of those aged 65 or older see the response as fully justified. 56% of 50 to 64-year-olds, 44% of 35 to 49-year-olds, and 27% of 18 to 34. That's that Gen Z range, sort of. 27% of 18 to 34-year-olds see the response as fully justified. Only 27%. Now, look. And I think Harry and I may debate about this a little bit. I think that I'd again I think that Israel is a good ally. I think that they the Jewish people deserve to have a state. I think that Israel over the last however long has generally. I won't get into that. I'll say this. I think that our allyship with Israel right now, as it stands, is good. I think President Biden made a good decision. I think it's fascinating, and it's not talked about enough, that our foreign policy over the next 10 to 15 years with Israel will be forced to shift in a dramatic way because young people in Gen Z are just simply not pro-Israel like the rest of America has been. I think even if you do polling about this, if this same situation may have happened, this exact same situation, I know situations like this have happened, but this exact same situation may have happened 10 or 15 years ago. I bet the response of, is this fully justified, would have been closer to 85%. America, polling-wise, has always been staunchly with Israel up until recent years, especially as young people have become to be a voting age. And now, as you see, if you are to, I think this, I do not like the question of, are you pro-Israel or pro-Palestinian? But if you're going to throw that poll at someone, I think young people are pretty split down the middle, if not go toward pro-Palestinian. And so I would take a bet that a lot of young people, as we become the largest voting blocs, are not going to vote for politicians who are going to fund $3 billion and fund 20% of Israel's military every single year, especially if young people see it as Israel is genocidal or occupying lands that they do not have a right to occupy. And again, I'm not here to make a standpoint on that. I'm just trying to give you information for once. But I think that that's very, very fascinating, and it's not talked about enough. And I would agree. I'll say this. I would agree that as Israel stands right now, right, as current Israel stands, it's moving toward this very far right, borderline fascist. Netanyahu seems to never go away. You have Netanyahu advisors calling for I think, using some absolutely horrific language in terms of this specific event, talking about what they intend to do to Gaza. I think the continual, we'll have to see in the next few days how accurate some of the reporting is of the current bombing in South Gaza. But I think as current Israel stands, I think it's possible to have a foreign policy, a strong ally for both for foreign policy reasons in the Middle East, because we need that. But it's also possible that that ally needs to not be committing war crimes. And again, I will again preface, because I already see the comments flying. It's been a tough situation. Harry and I have got slammed for being pretty much neutral. I would categorize myself as pro-Israel, but it is also true that their government has done some atrocious things. So, sorry for the rant again. You can let me know what you think about that.
Yeah, yeah, I think the more appropriate label for like Chris and I is not like pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. I think we're just like pro-innocent people.
Yeah, we're like
We just really care about.
I'm so sorry. I forgot there's like a little bit of a delay, so I like
No,
cut you off.
no.
Really, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's a little bit of delay. So if there's a little bit of delay, we're like talking over. It's difficult. Just keep that thought though, because I want to hear what you have to say to that. I think the more appropriate label is like we're pro innocent people. I think like labeling. I think it's. I just don't think it's productive for us in this conversation to label us one way or another. I think we fundamentally. Anyway, you guys know where we stand. When Chris and I were like planning the show or the podcast before this, we were kind of talking about this, and he brought up this point of like foreign policy changing within the coming years. And I see the polling, and I think it's interesting. However, I don't really think I see United States foreign policy shifting all that much when it comes to Israel. I think a lot of it really does depend as to what happens in the coming weeks and days, probably days, as to how Israel, what their invasion of Gaza looks like. How bad it is. I think a lot of people in the Israeli government that are like far right, like Netanyahu, probably don't want Palestine to exist anymore, which is obviously not something we support. I support a two-state solution, but I think that our partnership with Israel is a strategic one. It's one that helps both countries, and I'm not sure the United States is going to be so quick to give that up, even if Gen Z wants that to be the case. And maybe we elect politicians who don't support that partnership. But I think like our military is going to emphasize to these leaders, like, guys, like this is a very strategic partnership. We have to have like people in the region. We have to be attuned to the Middle East and to what's going on there and be able to collect the intelligence effectively. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if I see the partnership changing all that much in the coming years, but we shall see.
Okay, interesting take. I think, well, first of all, I appreciate you reiterating our position. I think I'm just like, and again, I think a lot of people will watch this and say, Chris, you seem to contradict yourself. Again, this is a very, very, very complicated situation. I keep telling people, they're like, but Chris this, but Chris this. I'm like, that's kind of the whole point. There's a lot of buts. We're just pro innocent people not dying. And a lot of innocent people are dying, which is really fucking sad. So if I get grilled for that position, fuck, I don't know what to tell you. But actually, I'm not sure that I agree. In terms of foreign policy, it's strictly in terms of politics and foreign policy. It is incredibly crucial that we have Israel. And I would agree that we may not be quick to move on. However, I think it's fascinating, the change in public opinion, and I'm specifically doing some comparison here to, for example, what's currently going on in Ukraine and Russia. I think that situation's a little different, but right now my understanding is that the White House is pretty much, the White House has shifted its position, and Congress has shifted its position of pretty much telling Zelensky, like, this is no longer a blank check. And Zelensky has flown to Washington several times recently because he's trying to keep up the pressure, because he knows the money is going to stop. Why is the money going to stop? Because all of a sudden, at the beginning of the war, we went from 68, maybe 65, 70, somewhere in there, percent of Americans said, I think the U.S. should be doing more for Ukraine. We should send them more money. Right now, we are now at 51% of Americans think the U.S. should be done funding Ukraine. And because of that public policy shift and a current 2024 election coming up, I think the White House is feeling genuine pressure that if they continue funding this war, it's going to put a serious nick in their re-election campaign. That's my political like take as an unbiased person. I think that the White House and the administration should continue to fund Ukraine, but that's the nature of politics. If the public doesn't want you to do it, then fuck. That the public doesn't want you to do it. But I think that will. I think Gen Z is really like. I think that this narrative on war, the U.S., doing a lot of these things. I think Gen Z is staunchly anti-establishment. They're not going to play the game of at least some of Gen Z. The people further left than us are anti-establishment. They're not going to play the game of this is for democracy. This is for that. They're going to say we don't want money going to, this is what they'll say. This is not me. They will say, we do not want our dollars going to a genocidal state. And I have not seen young people quite as passionate about any issue than this one. They are very passionate about this issue. Now, there's a lot
Really,
of
I disagree. I actually disagree with
really, dude, it feels like everywhere I look, I see a new 19 to 21-year-old tuning in on this issue who has never talked about politics in their life, which is fine. I support the use of social media. I support using your voice. I like that Gen Z is getting involved, but I feel like I have not seen young people quite as involved about any issue. Maybe that's my algorithm.
Well, I think that I don't know if I'd say like Gen Z are mostly like this is the issue that Gen Z cares about the most. I think like I've seen Gen Z definitely passionate about other issues, and I think that there's like sustaining passion about like I think there's like a momentary passion about this just because it's in the news, but I think like passion about issues like climate change and
yeah. Let's just be
delay,
clear.
my man, delay.
I'm so sorry. I'll let you finish. I am so sorry. There is
no. Dude, you got to finish your statement now. You got to fit
there.
Oh my god, bro.
Yeah,
oh my god.
I'm sorry. So my apartment Wi-Fi has been out for the last week and a half. So for us to record on our software, I have to use my phone's personal hotspot, and the internet's not very good. So we're having a little bit of. I apologize for that, but. I would say I'm not. This is definitely not the issue Gen Z is most passionate about. I'm just saying it is. There's a lot of momentary passion here that I have noticed.
Yeah, I think it's like a. Well, that's what I mean. I think it's like a momentary passion. I'm not sure. This is like the most. Gen Z is definitely passionate about this issue. A lot of young people are definitely passionate about this issue. We're seeing it online right now, but I'm not sure it's the most important issue. But it does. It just like I think like when we. This is about to be a hot take. This is about to be a really hot take. So I just warn you. I think it's like. It's sometimes I feel like people's anger is selective. Like there are like so many atrocities happening in the world right now that a lot of people don't talk about, and just in relation to this, like we're seeing all these people talk about it, but like why aren't people talking about the ongoing Uyghur crisis in China? Why aren't people talking about the crisis in Hong Kong? Why aren't people talking about people still being slaughtered in Africa, or the these a lot of people still don't talk about Ukraine. It's just like I don't know. I don't even know. It's just like it just feels like when I see like very far left people like really like chastising folks like you and I and stuff like that about not caring about these issues, it just seems very selective. Does that make sense? Like maybe that's just a hot take. Maybe I'm just being an idiot. I don't know, possibly.
No,
but it just seems like
no.
It seems like there's selective outrage on all these things. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead, bro. I'm so sorry if you're still. Just go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I keep thinking you're going like you're stopping talking, so I'm trying to predict it. So my bad, bro. I'm genuinely so sorry. The delay does not make it easy. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm bad in these conversations, wanting to keep talking. I apologize. But no, I literally all I was gonna say was like that's very fascinating. Like I think that's an interesting take. I don't think it's necessarily a bad one. I do think that the far left right now is doing a little bit of pretty intense, like very, very, very intense, just being fucking brutal. Anyone who has like has a hint of pro-Israel in them, but also from the far right. I think like a lot of these universities have set up pro-Palestinian events. The right is very, 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 very outraged about it. I'd say most people are outraged about it because I'd say, like I said in the polling, I think most people, regardless of this issue, are pro-Israel. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels like there are a lot of people who are the loudest on these issues who are also the quietest on others that are exactly the same, of like innocent people dying. Like if we want to have these positions, like if really far left people want to like come after President Biden and all this stuff, like they have to be consistent. And I think that's what, these issues bring out a lot of emotions. I think this has brought out a lot of emotion to me recently, just on the American political side of like, people are slamming Biden for being like, standing with our ally in Israel. And like they say he should be doing more for Palestinians, but I don't see them calling for, doing more. Like these are the same people who be like, oh, we got to stop sending money to Ukraine so innocent people can live. Like, as you were kind of mentioning earlier, like people are like, oh, we have to stop sending money to Israel. Leftists, I think, are like, they're like, we have to stop sending money to Israel. It's not fair. They're doing all these horrendous things. And I think that's an interesting conversation to be had. But then they're also the same people who are like, we have to stop sending money to Ukraine while innocent people are being lined up still as we're making as we're filming this podcast. Every single day, innocent people are still being lined up in Ukraine, getting shot in the back of the head and being buried in ditches, and Russian soldiers just going through these villages one by one and these towns one by one and just killing innocent people. It just seems like there's a lack of consistency, and that's a little bit off topic from what we were discussing, but it's certainly like something I've noticed in American politics. It's like we either care about all, like we have to be consistent here, and sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry because I realized I cut you off again, bro. I'm genuinely so sorry.
No, I was done. Honestly, you jumped in at the right time. You're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, that's actually a really fascinating take, and I think the one, like you said about Ukraine, is like super fascinating. That there is like seems to be that lack of consistency, and yeah, I agree. I also think that like, and again, this is a hard one for me to say, and a little bit of a hot take for someone like me. I very much support Gen Z using their voice. I very much support being active on social media. I very much support it. I think in a very, very, very complex issue like this, there's just been a lot of just bad information flying around, specifically on apps that younger people use, TikTok, etc. Like a lot of people on the far left are, why would President Biden be so, I just can't believe how many times I've heard this. Why would President Biden be so sympathetic to Israel? This is disappointing. That's like a blatant, like, I don't even mean to be a dick. That is the most outrageous misunderstanding of foreign policy and like American policy ever, like in terms of how close of an ally Israel is, etc. And so I just think that like I was going to relate somehow. I guess it didn't because I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, but I think back to your point, it's yeah. I mean, as we speak, literally. Like the U.S.'s standpoint on Ukraine has always been like, we'll come to the negotiating table and we'll talk to you when you stop lining up civilians and walking into, putting cruise missiles in the people's homes, and then lining up civilians and killing them, and then we'll come talk to you. But the last position on that, I guess, is just stop sending Ukraine money. It's not our issue.
Possibly, I think, but like. I think that why that like what the point I made like really kind of pisses me off, to put it more mildly, is that one of my fundamental beliefs is that we are President Biden says this a lot. We are the most powerful nation in the world, in the history of the world. We are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. If our allies are suffering or we see injustices in which we could make a demonstrable difference, I think that it's almost incumbent upon the United States to do so. Not saying we should put United States troops in these regions because, the 1990s, the early 2000s called, they want their foreign policy back, right? Not suggesting that. Right? But, with Ukraine, it is not only the right thing to do, but it helps the United States. Standing with Israel, they are our ally. It does help the United States. There are questions flying right now about how that'll look in the future. But we should also, help the Palestinian people, which is within our capacity. And we should help different countries around the world, which we do. because we can, and it really just doesn't hurt the United States to do so. And I just can't really sympathize or understand people who are like, oh yeah, let's just not send Ukraine any more money. Let's abandon our allies. We've made partnerships with them in the past. Let's abandon our allies and just let all these innocent people get slaughtered. And knowing, and we have to sit here for the rest of our lives knowing that, these mothers had to watch their children get killed, and then the parents were killed in front of them as well. I think that's a really difficult thing to live with, and that's not something I support. So I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, very well said. Extremely well said. I think that's a great point. And I
it's
like the
just
little
it's
bit
tough.
I like the little bit of disagreement there. We'll have to see. I do definitely acknowledge that it's like significantly different. I think the U.S. like desperately needs we need in terms of foreign policy. We need some what's the word? We need some say in that region, and Israel kind of gives a little bit of stability there. So it's complicated. Everything's complicated. I think I can't believe we're already 51 minutes in. My goodness. I think that with all that being said, Harry and I really just, if you've been affected by this in any way, regardless of where you stand, we're thinking about you and we're proud of you, and we just really hope that peace can be had because innocent civilians and children don't deserve to die.
Yeah, I think like with all that being said, I know like this is probably people watching who agree with us, probably people watching who disagree with us. We understand it's like a very heated topic, and there's a lot of emotion here. Just to reiterate again, we stand with innocent people. All we want is like a peace right now. All we want is a ceasefire. I think we both agree that both Palestine and Israel have a right to exist, Israelis, Jewish people alike deserve a state. Palestinian people deserve a state. Hamas is bad. Hamas should be eliminated. And also, I also should clarify, I don't think like Ukraine and what's happening in Israel is the same. It's just kind of like two major wars going on right now, just kind of looking, right, comparing and contrasting. But yeah, a very difficult issue. And as Chris said, like, if you are affected by this issue, anybody, you have any loved ones, friends, even friends of friends, whatever it may be, we are thinking of you. We are so, so sorry that this happened. And we hope that there's peace very, very soon, because this is just tragic. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. And final message, a few things. Thank you so much for listening. Just a couple more things. Just be careful what you listen to and read and on online social media. Continue to just try to learn. Do your best to listen. The fact that you're listening right now, you're doing something that a lot of people don't do, which is trying to educate yourself. Obviously, independently fact check everything we said. We're not experts on this. We're just trying to give you what we can. So we appreciate it. And on a lighter topic before we go, like I said, in the description of the YouTube, in the description of the Spotify, of wherever you're watching right now, or probably on our TikTok pages, etc., you can find a link to a Shopify store that will have some merch in it. Again, Harry and I, this has been a struggle for us, the morality issue, etc. But we are attempting to try to figure out a way to make a living right now, and I think the Patreon will be really good. But for now, I wanted to see a lot of people reaching out about merchandise and the support. One more time, it's what I'm calling a soft launch. So there's only going to be a couple things in there. It's not going to be like too crazy. I just kind of want to see like what people's thoughts are. And again, I know I'm not wearing it because I was wearing it all day yesterday, but it's actually pretty dope. Like it's unplugged, like just in the cursive, very comfortable hoodie, high quality. Full transparency, I haven't done the exact math yet, but we will probably be making anywhere from like $7 to $11 per hoodie. I'm trying to make them like as cheap as possible, but also want to make sure that they're A, high quality. I really want to make sure they're high quality, and B, that like I'm actually going to get them myself first and be able, we want to write handwritten notes, etc. So the shipping time will be a little longer. And that does make it a little more expensive because I have to ship myself. But anyways, if you're interested in supporting, truly, it means the world. It means so much. I can't describe. You guys are incredible. So catch us back here next week, Monday at 1 p.m. This has been Chris and Harry Unplugged. We appreciate you a lot. Please have a great week. You can check us out on other socials down below. Comment what you thought. Subscribe if you have not. And we'll be back next week. Peace.